Welcome back to Black Lotus Buds. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Michael. Thanks for joining us.
We're kicking off our 20th episode, and today we're discussing PSA Slab self-authentication, the Black and White Guild in Magic the Gathering known as Orzhov Syndicate, and we'll be pondering intellectual properties.
So, I hope you're ready to absorb some knowledge, Kevin, because I have explored the internet as a whole and brought back the gems we need to be confident in self-authenticating a PSA slab.
Yes. Share with us.
Right? So this is something personally that I tend to be a neurotic person about certain things. And I had a lot of anxiety about buying slabs and, having them authenticated or not. And I'm like, how do I know if it's real? I know packs can be resealed. It caused me a bit of stress. And now I know. So Kevin, if you have a slab nearby, I would grab it.
I've got it in my hand.
We're going to go over, excellent. The slab itself, we'll go over the label. And then we'll talk some extra about kind of seller selection and different things you can do. And some of this is my opinion. The rest of it I've got from reputable sources to understand how the slab itself works. And the stuff at the end is more my opinion that you can weigh in on here.
Okay, cool.
So the first thing is these are like resin molds. So they fill a mold with resin and then it makes this beautiful cube, okay? That process leaves a little nub, similar to like if you've ever done a model vehicle, like a model car or a Gundam. In the very bottom of your slab, you can take your finger and literally feel and see this little nub. And so all authentic slabs generally have that nub. Now, there was some indication that there are some Japanese companies that they do their resin seals a little differently. But in general, if you're buying American cards, you're going to see that nub, you're going to want that nub, and that's part of you knowing the slab is real.
I got the nub.
The nub is good. If you follow just above the nub, looking at the front of the card, in the bottom right, you'll see a PSA. And that is actually physically raised. So you can, move your fingers across it. It'll be a bump. And it will also be, if you flip over, on the backhand side.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
If now you're on the back and you follow all the way to the bottom left corner, you'll see these numbers in the slab that they're backwards if you're holding it from the back, but mine says 21. These numbers are generally for the trading cards like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! You're going to see a 21, a 27, or a 1T. There may be exceptions, but I think the vast majority are covered by those three numbers alone.
Cool.
Then we have on the side of the slab, you will see three little nubs, this time not physically felt with your finger, but inside the slab. So they are one near the very bottom, one near the very top, and one a little off-center, more towards the bottom than the top. Now, sometimes they look really clean, like the bottom of a test tube, and then, the tube going up. Sometimes they're a little foggier, because these are, again, like injection molds. So they just don't come out pristine, identical every time. The point is that they're sealed. So other physical properties of the slab, that covers most of everything on the outside. But if you turn your gaze to the inside, and this one may require some magnification, but if you have really good vision, you can see the rails that hold the card in place. There are four. Mm-hmm. And one is squared. And then inside that square, you'll see a beveled edge. And so a PSA slab will have both of those features on that rail. The last couple things you want to look for, one is that a PSA slab will always have squared corners, so you'll never see a rounded corner. It'll be a right angle. So if you ever have a slab that's a rounded edge where the inside of the card is held, that is not an authentic PSA. The very last physical thing you want to look for is if there is any obvious tampering. So if you're feeling this slab around and you have a lot of strange,
Bulges.
bulges, glues, anything other than the nub, that, the slab should be generally smooth and clean. Any of that would be kind of
Indicating
need for alarm.
Yeah.
A red flag there. So if we turn our attention to the label. Now, the label's interesting because I'll go over at the end. If you buy on Amazon, I have one now, it's $25 for a magnifier, a jeweler's, and the magnifier is a table magnifier, and it comes with a black light and a white light. Outside of having that, we'll go over everything you can do to look at this label. So the first thing you'll notice is on the front, the PSA label. Well, you can notice the font, but I personally, when I first heard that, make sure the font matches, I found that a little too overwhelming. I couldn't find a template online that would show me every letter, and I was like, how do I compare it to my other slab if I don't know they're real to begin with, kind of deal. So that's something you can look at, but personally I find that kind of difficult to translate to someone that is, doing this for the first time. So you want to turn your attention to the wavy lines that are all across the back of the label. Now, those wavy lines should be very clean and no smudging or blurring. On the right side of those lines, you'll see, almost as if it were a mirage, a PSA on the right side of the label. It's like almost like one of those paintings you have to blur your eyes to, but if you know it's there, you can pick out big lettering PSA where it would have gem mint or your rating. If you ever see those blue lines smudged, especially near where the grade is, like the 8, 9, 10, sometimes there is this practice of smudging an 8 and turning it into a 9 type deal. So you want to be aware of that, but I mean, that is going to be fairly rare and complicated to do. So if you have a $30 card, a $50 card, that's not really something you're worried about. And honestly, if you have a more expensive card, if you ensure the case is real, PSA, they're going to guarantee their authentication up to $250,000 per card and $500,000 per person. So you can't go out there and just hunt messed up slabs and cash them in, but they're going to guarantee up to a very reasonable amount.
Very cool.
Now, going back to authenticating your label, the PSA sticker on the front, it's got silver on it. Now, you can see this with really good vision with the naked eye. There are little tiny PSAs written within the silver foil of that label.
Yep.
And if you flip the card over to the backhand side, there's another silver PSA label that does the exact same. Now, the last real thing you can see with the naked eye, on the left of the back side of the label, there's a big silver PSA. Well, if you look above and below it, there are these very sets of 3 on the top and a set of 3 on the bottom. These little faded looking PSAs. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you can make that out with your eye or not. If you flip to the front, you will also see along the top the same sort of faded kind of font. It's almost like you have to catch the light just right. It'll be PSA flipped upside down and upside right, growing bigger and smaller, rolled all the way across the top of the label, where the red line meets the white part of the label.
Yeah, now it's kind of going up and down a little bit, like a little wave.
Yep, it is a little wave.
Okay.
Now, if you had that table jewelers with the black light, you would find some features that are easily recognizable by even the most novice of people. So if you hold that black light up, those faint PSAs along the top of the front, the ones that you're saying look like a wave, and the ones on the back will light up in black light, so they glow. And that is like one of the best indicators. If your slab looks good, your physical slab, and you have those markers on the label, it's pretty solid that you have a PSA slab. Now, the last thing is, if you use that same black light over those silver labels, the one on the front and the back, instead of reflecting light like a safety vest, it looks kind of dull. You'll see the glimmer of sparkles like peppered in there, but it won't light up and kind of blind the card out. It's a special feature of that silver foil. Um, and at that point, you can be extremely confident that you now have a real PSA authenticated slab. And again, if at that point the card isn't real, they guarantee it. So they'll pay you for the price of the card if ever they authenticate a card that turns out to be a fake or an alter or something like that. Now, things to consider in addition to this. I was saying, like, just make sure, if you're first buying, I would recommend buying from a couple different vendors. Don't go to the same one. And then you'll be able to compare, do these slabs look the same? Maybe I'm saying all these things, but you still feel unsure. Well, I made the point in a recording I did about it's very unlikely you're going to buy 10 slabs from 10 different vendors and get all 10 fakes. So, if you're going to shop some slabs, get a couple, and then you'll have them to compare to your other stuff. Also, if it's too good to be true, if you're looking at a $6,000 card and you're getting it, for $3,000, without looking at the slab itself, that could be a big indication that, something is up, something is fishy. Does the seller have bad reviews if it's an online purchase? Does he have a small account that's not established? Things like that. And the very last point I want to bring, I know I've monopolized this, but we're empowering, everybody to be able to look at these. I really feel great that I can do this now. But you can actually take your jewelers and that light and just look at the card. If you have a PSA 10, it's going to reflect that grade. Now, there may be certain small blemishes here or there, but if you hold up your magnification and you're seeing scratches everywhere, tattered edges, again, that's something that may be a little off. A 10 should reflect the grades as they describe them on PSA. So that's the best I got, but honestly, I've looked at all of my slabs and confirmed all of these features, and I'm pretty confident that I have all authentic PSA slabs, and it makes me feel good and confident in the hobby.
Yeah, now, it's incredibly important to have this information so that anybody is able to just confirm that the money they're spending is actually put to, something that's usable.
Right, like you want to make sure you're getting the collectible when you're buying, the slab. Now, for someone, when I learned all of this, I was able to visibly see a label and all these features. Now, how do you feel like that translated over audio? Did you find all those things and feel like, yes, this is, outside of the blacklight, like this is an authentic slab? Or did you feel like there was a lot of like, oh no, I still don't know?
No, I'm glad that you clarified at that one point that the sharp edges and the 90-degree angles is the inside of the slab where the card lies, because the exterior edges of this slab are all rounded. So aside from that, this was a flawless representation of how to confirm that your card is in fact correctly graded, and it really does represent how, if there's this many factors in PSA's slabs that they provide to those cards that are graded, that they've graded, then it really does represent the extent of which they grade the actual card itself. So that's something also that I'm understanding about this whole process here.
Well, I realized as I was learning all that too. I was like, dude, I'm buying like a $20 card because I could get a deal, and I don't have the capital to buy like crazy cards. And I'm like, I don't think someone's going to go through all this effort to make a $3 margin on a $20 fake. So I was confident just on that fact alone, but being able to ID all this stuff, I mean, I looked through each one, regardless of price. I looked through every card I had just to be sure.
As you should. I mean, you don't want to find, and I guess if you do find the one that stands out, then you've got a case, and now you can, bring it to PSA and say, hey, I think you guys graded, either you guys graded a card that's not correct here, or, somebody might have tampered with this.
Now, it would be interesting. I wish I knew the other like Beckett and things like that. But, one day at a time, I guess.
Well, Beckett, yeah, that's another fun one that I have only heard about through you, and then looking into it myself with the black labels and how some of these cards can be quite literally perfect. Gets you excited about collecting any type of card, knowing that there could be the chance that ripping one open from a pack could result in you finding quite literally the one of one perfect card of that card.
The One Ring.
Yeah, I know. Every time we mention anything about one of one now, I go right back into the One Ring. Well, Michael, talking about Magic the Gathering, I think we are going to jump into our next segment where we take two cards in the competitive space of Magic the Gathering and pit them against each other. It is time for this or that. With both cards in hand, which would you play? This tonight is Scrawling Crawler from Foundations. It's a 3 colorless mana artifact creature featuring a robotic construct. And it reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player loses 1 life. That tonight is Camball, Profiteering Mayor from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. A 3-mana legendary creature featuring a pretty considerably buff mayor directing his city staff, costing 1 colorless, 1 plains, and 1 swamp, and it reads, whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, create a tapped token that's a copy of it. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So, with both in hand, Michael, which do you play?
All right. With both in hand, I think so. I've been thinking this over as you've been talking, switching back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the assumption is that I have 3 mana, so these are both 3 mana cards, and I'm assuming I can play Camball. And in that case, I think I would stick, and I guess it would depend on if your opponent had a deck that was creating tokens as well. But I would still, Camball is a good choice. It has a higher defensive stat. So I could throw that out there and kind of have him on the field and start gaining that perk while my opponent loses life. Now, outside of them playing a mobilized deck or a token deck, I guess you would instead use Scrawling Crawler, because that way they're losing life every time. Again, with a little bit of caveat that, you don't have, too low a life to use it or something like that. But I think with both in hand, no other context, I'm going to play Camball and get my legendary creature out there. And then I have Scrawling Crawler for the next turn. So this or that, I am choosing that Camball, Profiteering Mayor.
Well, again, no right or wrong answer here, so way to go. I like your context that you gave it. And I would partly agree, but heavily I'm going to lean towards disagreeing with this one. And it's against my own wishes. So I do love Camball, Profiteering Mayor. I think this card is underappreciated in the entire game for being 3 mana and really being able to capitalize on your opponent with anything that creates tokens for them. That could be those silly old clues that you love so much, Michael, with the detectives. This could be treasure tokens, or just plenty of creatures and creature tokens when you're mobilizing and doing anything with creating tokens.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that. Like, food can be one of them, all that stuff.
Yeah. However, overall, the choice is Scrawling Crawler with knowing... Well, number one, it's colorless, so you can throw it into any strategy, any deck you make. But also knowing that it is a creature on top of the ability that it's going to do. So you could always use it to defend and maybe get rid of it. But overall, every single time it's your turn, you're going to get 2 cards, and they're going to draw 1. And every time they're drawing a card, they're going to be losing life. So the card draw is going to be in your favor. because they're going to be taking a hit and losing life each time you're drawing your cards. And that's ultimately how you're going to get a much larger advantage in the game. Drawing the cards that you need in the moment, playing them when you can as quickly as possible. And overall, I believe that would be the reason why Scrawling Crawler is going to be the better card to play compared to Campbell. But again, no right or wrong here. I love Campbell for all the token reasons, and I really do want to actually make a deck that focuses on using him because, it could be a toss-up if your opponent has any tokens that they're making, but if they do, they're screwed with this card on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's good insight about the draw and getting 2 cards on your turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was a quick one tonight with the this or that, and I know that you've been playing a lot of mobilizing decks on Arena and stuff. Any interesting gameplay that you've experienced recently?
Well, I've switched over from ranked that I had played so much and I started really, I was grinding too much and not really enjoying it. And I realized that if I switch outside of ranked, I get a fair mix of experienced players. And it allowed me to kind of have some fun, both winning and losing, as opposed to just losing all the time. As far as decks go, there's been a few, but honestly, they're really either obvious and interesting, like, creating food tokens in this, feedback loop for life, or, powering up like, I'm racing a green deck that's powering up one bad monster, or it has a countdown timer, and those have been fun for me. But then the unranked, it's honestly been a lot of me just dominating players that are unable to get the cards they need before I'm able to take advantage of, a quick attack. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I've seen that I would like to add to my deck, but I am saving up a bunch of wild cards to do so, are a bunch of spells that just basically cast out damage right away. And that, and maybe some cards that would increase me drawing as well. But I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff that has allowed my opponents to get more land more quickly. And that is something that in a deck where if I wanted to cast more and draw more, I think I might need to mix that in as well. But I don't know. I'm just still exploring what I like. And I've bought a white and green deck, I think, in real life that I haven't played with yet. And I let my friends borrow my white, red, and black commander deck. So, yeah, I'm still learning, just getting into it. I feel like, despite having played, I think, 30 hours on Arena, a lot of that was just getting, second turn wiped by some maniac.
There was somebody I was playing with who had a deck identical to your mobilized deck, and they kept saying good game endlessly the entire game. They kept pressing the button good game. And I thought to myself, is this you with another tag, like another name on here? And I was like, there's no way. And ultimately, they looked like they were going to beat me. And then because they kept saying that, I just kept thinking, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I have to actually take my time with this game. And ultimately, I did pull out a win. And they stopped saying good game right as they recognized that I was going to actually destroy them. The turn before them destroying me, I think I got myself down to 1 life. And then, it blocked everything I could, but just whatever I needed to hold on to that 1 life. And then I think they only had 1 or 2 mana left over, and I pulled out the win. So it was fun. It had me thinking all about you with these mobilizing cards. But yeah, there's plenty of strategies you'll see as you continue to play. And, some of these players in just regular play, not on ranked, are just trying to practice their deck that they might have just built. So I'm glad that you're getting a lot of wins. Hopefully a lot of them are actually true, against a real deck that somebody's testing or just messing around with before they go back in ranked.
A lot of the times where they were really close and I could see what they were doing, which actually is why I probably won, because I was able to, I have one of the cards allows me to look at their hand and discard one. Whenever I get that, it really just, yeah, it just destroys them because now I not only see what they were doing, I get to basically hinder them as best I can see,
Yeah.
and it works. So
That's a fun
it's been
strategy.
fun. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a hair deck that some dude made. Like, dude,
Oh,
I don't even
25,000 rabbits.
understand. Yeah, I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
understand the loop because he was struggling, and then he passed out a couple cards, and I was like going through my phone or something, looking like at like TCG Player or something, and I look up, and now instead of having a few rabbits,
It's like
it
a
has like, yeah, it has like a
the
multiplier of
whole
Albert. I'm like,
family.
what the
Yeah,
hell
yeah.
just happened? And that was it. That was the good game. That it was just a wipe. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what happened to you, dude?
Yeah, rabbits were the first one from Bloomberg that really start to stand out with that insane multiplying aspect. But then you've now seen that with mice in Bloomberg, and then I think there's been another one, elves. I think more so than anything else, with Tarkir being released, and they're kind of incorporating these older cards that were all elves from back in the day. They've put in a lot in Tarkir, so it's cool to kind of see these older strategies reappearing, and I think slowly becoming more and more prominent and prevalent in the game as even Final Fantasy is going to be released in the beginning of June. We're probably going to see a lot more cards that are going to favor some of these newer sets that were released and some of these strategies that we're seeing in there. But again, on that note, Orzhov's Syndicate is the finale here tonight of the two color guilds in Magic the Gathering. So we'll break this one down and kind of conclude these segments. And Orzhov's Syndicate is the black and white guild in Magic the Gathering, where you are constantly choosing between being selfish and selfless, with opposing ideals fighting over control. It is truly about life or death. So, this is forcing your opponent to respond to what you do, surprising them by utilizing cards that remove specific permanents in play, amassing a horde of creatures and tokens, and seeing that even the smallest of creatures do their part in destroying your opponent. So, mechanics that you're going to stumble across with this set, or with this guild, there's older ones like Extort, Afterlife, Haunt. These are some ones that I'm not too familiar with, beyond my time, pre circa 2020 2021 era, but there's plenty of lifelink, there's plenty of ward on these creatures, there's hexproof, there's menace, there's a lot going on with this set, and popular abilities are going to be, I think, more so than not, this particular color combination is going to be utilizing that incremental life gain and life drain, both in enchantments and creatures. So you've seen this, Michael, where a creature enters the battlefield, target opponent, or each opponent loses a life and you gain a life, or each time a creature of yours dies, that happens. And this is pretty consistent with this white and black combination, or maybe another color incorporated like red. And that can really start to overpower your opponent with enough turns. So that's a big part of this one that I love. As small as one creature might seem that does that ability, if you start to throw multiple creatures or have multiple tokens that can die and get recreated again, just like Mobilize, there you go. I mean, that is going to really bring out all of these little characteristics of this guild, and then ultimately crush your opponent. So the commander I've asked you to pull up, and I want your opinion about this one. Teysa Karlov. This card in a commander deck would be considered the commander to play, and I honestly do think this is a very, very powerful commander. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, which is awesome. But on top of that, every single creature token you control has vigilance and lifelink while this creature's on the battlefield. Huge if you're trying to disrupt your opponent and force them to block, demand that they take some damage from your attacking creatures, or anything in between. So what do you think about this card?
Bro, this card is absolutely sick. I mean, I've been using, what is that guy's name? The old bell ringer, I can't remember, Zarlov. Um, but he doesn't allow pieces to be sacrificed. And then in the commander version, he does a few other added effects. But this seems so overpowered because one of the problems I have in my mobilized deck is it's so aggressive. I can't often defend. So all my creatures are done at the end of the turn. So
tapped,
vigilance, yeah, would add a lot. And lifelink, one of the other features that I have problems with my red, black, and white deck is that I'm often losing by just a couple life points. And you mentioned getting some lands that add life and some other cards you suggested for my like smaller mana creatures, but I feel like those are just icing on the cake if you build, because so I guess everybody probably knows this, but in Commander, you're like resummoning your commander at the cost of extra mana. So you can essentially make it so you have this perk most, if not all, of the game. And building a deck around white and black where you're specifically triggering abilities. I mean, just think of my worst card is this like vampire, I think. And when he dies, he triggers a token. So he would just trigger 2 tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, this just powers up everything. It's a very good complement to a black deck. So, I mean, it seems OP. I love it.
This is one of those cards where being a 2/4 creature may not be the standout card that's going to crush your opponent as far as damage to them by attacking. But everything else about it, this is the creature that you're going to not attack with because you really want to make sure this one just does not die in combat to allow those creature tokens to continue to have vigilance, continue to have lifelink, and force your opponent to like remove this card off the battlefield in order for it to disappear. So really interesting. And even the flare text at the bottom, while Kaya is Guildmaster, Teysa waits patiently at the center of the Orzhov web of power. And that's kind of what's being represented, I think, here in the picture of Teysa, just looking out that window, dreaming of her in control. Now,
the guy I was speaking of, his name's Zurgo. It's Zurgo.
Zurgo, there you go. Yeah, and I'm sure there's multiple Zurgos out there, as there are with many of these.
Many.
Like, yeah, exactly. So yeah, you said the one in Commander is different from the other one in Standard right now. I guarantee that's true. A commander in this guild, Athreos Shroud Veiled, is a god and a popular commander, I would say. But I would think Athreos God of Passage is even better. So you just look up Athreos, and then now you can find all sorts of cards that you could throw into your deck, like a commander deck for this one. But there's another one, Liesa, Shroud of Dusk. One other commander I do want to point out as being a very strong, very reasonable card to use as your single creature to run your strategy with this guild here. Another card, Michael, I wanted you to look up, an OP Planeswalker with these colors. Now, there's another OP card that I'll briefly hit on right now called Anguished Unmaking. It's a 3-mana instant card that removes any single non-land permanent. So name your card, enchantment, artifact, planeswalker, creature, battle, whatever it is, you can get rid of the one thing that your opponent has that's screwing everything up. So that's an incredible card, but this OP Planeswalker, Kaya Intangible Slayer, I mean, there's so much going on with this. There's a lot. We won't necessarily need to hit on everything. But look at that first ability. Already it has hexproof, so it can't be the target of your opponent's spells. They can't destroy target Planeswalker. They can't target this in any way. So already that's pretty strong for a Planeswalker. There's only a couple that have hexproof. On top of that, with it starting with 6 loyalty counters on it, the very bottom ability you're able to use as soon as it hits the battlefield. That, I think, is what makes this one super, super dirty. And when you have this card in your deck, if you can get 7 mana and play this card, geez, you're really going to crush your opponent. That bottom ability.
That's a tide changer there for sure.
That bottom ability just takes their best creature or enchantment and just rips it apart and just turns it into this terribly, stupid 1/1 spirit with flying. Like it's
Now, did you mention a card called Anguished Unmaking?
Yes.
Or no?
Yeah.
You did? I'm holding that card in my hand.
Now
it says exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life.
Yes. Yeah. This is like one of the cards that if you're going to be playing this deck like Commander with this format and this guild, that card goes into this deck 99 out of 100 times.
Excellent. I bought this on TCG Player so that when my friend, we agreed we would play our basic Commander decks while we learn the game. But as soon as he opens that door, I have this card. Like, I've searched for this, and it's going in there, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's other really good cards that can, like, remove, one particular thing or anything else. But you never know. Like, in a guild like this, where you're going to, like, you're favoring losing life in general, whether that's your opponent losing life or sometimes you'll be the one to benefit from losing life. Essence Channeler, I think, is one of the cards that when you lose life during your turn, the creature now gains flying and vigilance until end of turn. So if you have a card that can allow you to lose life, although it might seem like you don't want to lose life during your turn, especially if you're the one causing yourself to lose life, in some cases that actually is going to work towards your strategy and really benefit you at the end of the day. So really neat concepts with this guild. I'm glad that this happened to be one of the final ones that we talked about. And the last thing I wanted to talk about it was just creatures and classes in this one. Thrall servants, those who represent the afterlife. So there's a lot of vampires, angels, there's spirits, there's humans, and then even like random bats and birds, which right now with the recent sets, I had to mention these bats and birds because there's a lot of good ones. And then the classes that you'll find are going to be like knights, clerics, assassins, and all sorts of, various other things.
I don't know why. It's got to be some PTSD from Arena. But when you say bats, it like gets under my skin a little bit. I don't remember if I faced a bat deck, but I feel like I did. And like even the mention of bats kind of annoys me. I don't remember what happened though, but I'm like, these damn bats. I don't have any bats in my deck, so I know it was someone I played.
Yeah, I've got one, but I don't think it was me that tortured you. I think it was one of the first infinite loops you stumbled upon, where once these swamp bats started to stack on top of each other, it just started to create this infinite loop of the opponent gaining life or losing life, triggering you to lose life. Whenever you lose life, they gain life. Whenever they gain life, you lose life, and then the turn just is, the game ends right there. You're just watching this like play out one life at a time, seeing, 29 life disappear to 0 in one turn. And as we've talked about the meta and standard play comparable to Commander, it's fun with these strategies. It's fun learning and knowing about the ways to, kind of take advantage of what's out there and create this infinite loop. And I appreciate it, and I'm sure a lot of people do. It can be a little bit discouraging, especially if you're new to the game. But I think over time, just recognizing that there's so many of these, infinite loop possibilities out there with certain card combinations, you got to appreciate it when you do see it. And that will be something that may fill this space in our podcast in the near future. I'd like to discuss really cool win combinations that are ones that I've used and either are popular or not too popular. I haven't really looked too many of them up, so it'd be interesting to figure that out.
Yeah, that'd be cool, especially if someone's listened along to all of these podcasts. Like, I went from knowing pretty much nothing to playing, not too much, but playing a little bit of Arena and in real life, and now it would be interesting to kind of hear about these combos to see if any of them piqued my interest to rebuild,
Yeah. There's going to be one win con that stands out above them all. and that will stand out to you above them all. And almost perfectly, this works right into the next segment tonight. We're going to be talking time-tested trades. This is where we discuss historic and iconic trading cards. And today we will discuss Sheoldred the Apocalypse from the Dominaria United set of Magic the Gathering. This one is arguably known for its competitive nature in the game. It's a 4-mana cost, 4/5 creature with Death Touch, and its abilities are whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. This one was released in 2021, and this card still goes for near mint, Michael. Not PSA graded. You could even throw damage into the equation. It's still going to be really close to this number. Don't get crazy with it, though. What do you think near mint, just a regular one of these cards, goes for right now? 4 years later.
Okay. So now that's still playable within standard, right?
It is
It's
right now
4
still in
mana.
standard. Yeah.
It's black, and you just need 2 swamps. It's
Mm-hmm.
4/5, Death Touch. It seems to be essentially a staple of any. If you have a black and anything deck, this can pretty safely do you justice, right? Pretty strong 4/5, comes out pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say $35.
80 American dollars.
80.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Still,
that's a lot.
I mean, yeah, it may have been around 60 when it came out, and now the only way you're going to get it for 60 if it's damaged. So, pretty impressive.
God.
Kind of just represents how incredibly useful this card is. Now, simple math here. In 2 turns, with just drawing during the upkeep, you will gain an 8-point spread over your opponent. If you draw a card on your turn, now they draw a card and they lose 2 life, and then you draw a card and you gain 2 life, and then they draw a card and they lose. You're going to get an insane advantage just with it being out there and not synergizing with anything else. So exactly to the point you just made, alone on the battlefield, this card will still have a very, very powerful advantage against your opponent. And with that Death Touch, maybe it will be utilized to say, you know what, I have to, block their 16/16 creature and kill it with Death Touch, and hope that they don't have like an instant or something that's going to keep their creature alive if they choose to attack. So very, very powerful card. I think everybody who has played in Arena has seen this card used by an opponent, especially in standard ranked matches. And it was used as part of the WinCon, fun fact here, in 2023, the World Ranked deck. It paired impossibly well with cards like Talion, the Kindly Lord, or this one creature, Michael, Refine, I think it's Refine Scheming Seer. Now, this card was whenever a creature you have like attacks, it connives X, where X is the amount of attacking creatures. What connive is you draw that many cards, and for every card that you discard that is not a land, I think it has to be just like anything that's not a land, your creature gets +1/+1. So it's an absurd way of just getting cards in your hand in a moment. Yeah, you're going to discard a lot of them, or all of them. Or you don't even necessarily need to choose to discard the card you drew. Of course, that's the benefit of that mechanism right there, being able to pull a non-land and then discard a land. But more importantly, paired with Sheoldred, it's the drawing so many cards in a turn. If you draw 4 cards, you've just gained 8 life. Huge in any one turn. And before I ask you the question, Michael, I'll tell you what I love about this card is whenever you see this in gameplay, typically it commands 100% of either your or your opponent's attention, which is incredibly hard to do in a game of 20,000 plus cards or thousands of cards currently in standard. So I've got to ask you, having said all that, Michael, will this last the test of time?
I think so. And the reason I say it, I mean, you've pitched it very well. But I want to put this in my commander deck, which is a timeless deck, right? There's no limit to that.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's good enough for me to be like it goes in the timeless deck, then it is, right? A time tested trade.
There you go. You heard it here, folks. Sholdred. It's going down in history. But I mean, I absolutely love this card, and yeah, eventually I will own one.
Disgusting looking card. Like, it's horrifying.
Gosh, it stands out, man. When you see it in play, it just draws your attention. You're like, okay, I have to. You go right back to looking at your hand. What kill creature card do I have to get this off the battlefield, and ensure that my opponent is gonna prevent that from happening. Crazy.
Well, hey, look. Do you mind if we cut right quick, just so I can take a leak?
Yeah.
Well, we're like right in between.
We'll be right back, folks. And we're back.
Well, what was next? Oh, So this is a topic I wanted to lead. And gauging by your reaction, I'm not sure. I know we've brought this up before, but I'm now starting to form a completely different opinion. And that is about intellectual properties, and specifically Magic the Gathering. Now, I think you had brought this up to me, Kevin. You had asked me how I felt, and I was like, yeah, dude, I think this is like the greatest thing. Having people, and it's true, people are going to get into Magic based on they've never heard of Magic, but they love Final Fantasy, and they're going to buy the new set. That's just how that's going to work. And it's going to be with everything. Lord of the Rings, they're going to have to buy. And now they have Magic the Gathering cards. So I thought this was like the greatest thing. Now, to juxtapose this, we had you teaching me Magic where I hadn't really learned to appreciate it personally yet. And you were telling me things, and it was like hearing history, and I didn't feel a personal attachment to it. You would be like, well, this is the lore of this card, and I'm like, why are you telling me? Like, this is some really niche information is how I was taking it. Like, not really understanding. And now I've started buying Zurgo was a perfect example. I found out that Zurgo, my commander, and also one of my main cards on the arena, I found out that he was previously a bellmate, like a bell ringer. Like, he was on the field ringing the alarm, and he had rose to command. And I'm learning this, and my friend Eric bought a Bloomborough deck, and there's a whole storyline with the like owl, and there's a protagonist and a villain, basically. And it's like blowing my mind. There's even a card that was called something like Peace Offering. And as I'm exploring these decks, and we ripped a bunch of cards together, and I'm seeing these themes, I started appreciating. I would find there was a Zurgo card. I thought I'd seen them all. There was another one that predated the Bell Ringer one, and it was like an alternate timeline. And I'm like, holy shit, how deep does this go? It's just like this lore. And at this point, for me, Kevin, it took initially, the reaction was, I was like, this intellectual property stuff, including SpongeBob and Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy, I'm like, it dilutes what Magic is. Because when I got into Magic, you were telling me this lore, and I couldn't really comprehend, because of the intellectual properties, that Magic had its own lore outside of like some niche nerdy stuff on a website. I didn't understand how it flowed through the cards through time and iterations. And now I'm like, what a terrible thing to have added. Now, there was an interview with the original creator, and it was kind of funny because he said some things like they addressed like the ban list, and he was like, what's the ban list? And they were like, oh boy. And they explained that, and he basically said on the intellectual properties he had mixed feelings. That he really loved the original lore of Magic, obviously precious to him, but he also wanted to expand to other people. And my take on this, even though I initially was like, how awful that we don't have this like lore anymore. And I'm kind of like, really though, if I wanted to play with my friends or I wanted to play with you and we wanted to keep the integrity of that, we could just omit the non, magic lore themed decks. We can ignore the SpongeBob or Spider-Man because honestly, my best experiences have been talking to you or playing with my friend Eric. It's so limited, but they are leagues above um, the experiences I have on just Arena. It's fun, but it's not the same level. I'm not appreciating it in the same way. So I don't really
Fully
think
immersed.
yeah, it doesn't really ruin it, but it when I realized that Magic was not just a card game, that it was its own story progression, I was like, oh wow, it kind of turned me off of, Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy, where before I didn't really care. I don't know what your opinion is on this, but I'm not really against it in any way, the like new IPs coming in, but I do have this like desire. I wish I could have like a Magic lore only, kind of like we have standard. I wish there was like a Magic only, just so I could appreciate each set coming out and know I'm just buying. Like for example, Eternity's Edge. I'm getting the collector box. Is that Magic lore, or is that like an intellectual property, or is it no longer? Is it neither? Like I don't know now. I'm new, so I don't know the answers to all this stuff.
Yeah, that's actually one that I don't know the answer to, but I'm just as interested in figuring that out as you are. It is wild how Wizards of the Coast has incorporated these other IPs and other lores into the whole realm of Magic the Gathering. I appreciate it in all of its glory, but to your point, yeah, I mean it would be nice to refrain from, occasionally the very popular like you just pointed out, Lord of the Rings, and that would have been why back then that wasn't a part of standard. So when Lord of the Rings got released, it was cool, it was fun, a lot of people loved it. But those that were very intent on the competitive aspects of standard were able to just keep plugging along and chugging along with all these cards that they know and all the lore embedded in Magic for Magic by itself. Now, as we've mentioned a couple times, and we'll repeat it, this year all of the sets that they release are a part of standard. So Spider-Man at the end of the year, Final Fantasy coming up, I think it's June 13th, and several other sets that they release. Everything is going to be a part in standard. So, be ready for it, because any card you have, although it might be seemingly overpowered and outside of the world that with Magic, it will be legal and it will be, intense to see how this kind of disrupts gameplay. I don't think Tarkir has done anything to disrupt the gameplay too heavily now. There have been a couple cards in there that are a little wild, some that we've brought up in this or that's. But hey, we'll have to see what comes out of Final Fantasy and then circle back and see, what's to come with more lore and more IPs along the way.
I know it's weird to say, but and again, I'm not against the IPs. I can't wait till there's something I'm super hype about, and I like honestly, it's going to be the greatest, right? Like if it's an IP you're a big fan of, but I do feel like it would be cool had I grown up in the era where it's the magic in Magic the Gathering is that lore. And now if I take part in competitive, now I'm not going to know exactly what I'm seeing yet, right? Like obviously I'll know if SpongeBob gets thrown out there, but maybe you're throwing Lord of the Rings stuff and I'm not really understanding, whereas before it was all just purely Magic. And I honestly, it's kind of like maybe I was left with an impression the way the creator talked about it, because he kind of said the same thing. He's like, I have mixed feelings, and it left me with mixed feelings, because I'm kind of like, dang, I wish I could have easily dove into this, and now, just into the Magic specific, and now I'm gonna get kind of a healthy mix, and
Yeah.
But when I buy, I guess like the Tark here, right? That's all Magic. So what about Bloomborough? Would Bloomborough count as Magic lore? Or is that its own thing too?
I believe so. I think it is Magic. Yeah, the ones that you'll now there's even a couple like random name cards that if you pull out of Magic and you search, you'll find in One Piece like the same name of somebody. Now, I don't know if that is an homage to the one, the set that was created first that the other company is saying, you know what, we're going to honor them, or if they're just
Kinda like
embedding
an
it into the
Easter
lore
egg.
altogether. Yeah. Or if it's kind of just a part of like the way that this world of trading cards that we're in, maybe removing ourselves from like Pokemon more or less, but like these other ones are kind of, there's like this blend, this weird hybrid of all these fantasy creatures and characters out there. And I think we've talked about Dungeon and Dragons being part of this discussion of like creatures and spells or abilities, the land, where the planet, like all of this can kind of weave its way in through different sets and different trading card games in general. So interesting to see what will continue to be changed along the way now that this is more becoming like a regular normalized part of the game, having these other very, very popular Spider-Man at the end of this year, concepts now being integrated into the game.
Well, it's
Zergo
also
Bellstriker.
important.
That's an old one.
Yeah.
This is an orc warrior, and they've pretty much recreated that card with this new Fleeting Effigy card that they just released. So I think Magic does a really good job at pulling these older cards from their own game and then repurposing them in a slightly different way, and renaming it and having a little bit different, but still embodying the characteristics of an older card. So I think we're going to be seeing that just as much as we'll be seeing references and actual cards and names of other IPs out there.
Well, it's important to also realize like things can change. Like Magic, they can always see like if people are starting to feel like things are diluted and they're losing traction of, interest or something. They can make a new set that is specific to only Magic. It's its own league. They could do all that stuff. I remember being upset at Pokemon that they came out with Mega Evolutions, and eventually there was a show. I think Pokemon Origins. It's more of a aggressive adult version of Pokemon, but it made me really appreciate it. But then the next series or so, they were like, yeah, that's not a thing anymore, and they'll test out. Later it was like these giant versions of Pokemon, and they were basically playing with different concepts, and I realized, there's no reason for me to grasp Pokemon as I know it and refuse any change. So I'm gonna try to be, just open-minded to Magic and appreciate it for what it is. And like I said, there's nothing to prevent me, and I'm not at a level that this is distasteful for me yet, where I can just go buy a couple pre-made Commander decks with my friends, and we're still learning every card. So everything's new to us. Every mechanic's still fun. So we can jump into the lore that way. That's what we did with Bloomborough. We were finding cards and we're like, oh my god, this is what your box was talking about. I pulled the card. It's right here. Look at it. Yeah, it was a blast, man. I've been enjoying Magic. I'm glad you introduced me to this stuff, man.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're loving it, because I'm loving the collectability of the cards in general. And, I was all ears when you were talking about PSA slabs earlier, and I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in at least having that for reference in the future. And I'm glad that the slab that I was holding is, in fact, at least to my knowledge right now, a true PSA slab.
I know how sad would it be if you were like, yeah, I don't have any of that. Like, as you're holding it, it just comes apart. Like the card slides out.
Just this wet piece of cardboard. How in the world?
It's just putty. It's not even.
It's like,
cardboard.
wow, the gloss is actually a sheen of oil that was sprayed on this card.
I actually ripped up some Pokemon cards recently because I thought I had a fake, and I realized not at all. That is how legitimate reverse foils are made. And I ripped up like 3 or 4 real cards to get to the bottom of it. I was like, no, I have enough inventory. I can find out right now.
Nice, man.
I had to be sure.
Way to go. Yeah. That's great.
Well, are you ready for a different kind of magic here?
Ooh. Is there going to be a djinn involved?
There may be. There may very well be. So it's time for our ending segment here, Sejum's Murder. Now let me take you on a journey. You stand before the Angel of Time, a beautiful, full-bodied woman draped behind a thin veil of heavenly cloth, a chain belt with an ever-running hourglass around her hips, and wings of radiant light gloriously shining betwixt her shoulder blades. You were given an option. Return to level 1 to retain your prizes, or proceed without power, prizes, or progression to get double the points instead. Now, you had brought up a poll, and so we polled on both YouTube and Spotify, and we got 1 vote. Now, I worded it specifically to go in one direction, but they chose yes at one of the only vote. 100% of participants voted to take the offering given from the angel and replay level 1. So if it were not for the poll, I would tell you to choose wisely. But am I to assume you're choosing to go and replay level 1?
I put it in the audience's hands, or hand in this case, and we are going with what they chose.
They probably have to. I mean,
okay.
Not necessarily, but maybe. Okay. So here we go. This will be a fun, easy adventure. In tradition of the game, Kevin, what is your favorite trading card game?
I might be remiss if I don't mention Magic the Gathering.
Well, with Magic of Gathering as your answer, you are filled with infinite vigor. So, you suddenly awake in the middle of a jungle covered in sweat. You hear crashing waves. You feel the rumbling of the ground beneath your feet. As hissing vents release putrid, rotten-smelling, musky air, you begin to sprint, filled with this limitless vigor. You leap around the obstacles and heavy foliage on the jungle floor. Spider monkeys scatter as you spook them from snacking on grubs beneath a log. Frogs dart about. Insects aplenty spectate you from their various vantage points. They see you arrive in a clearing, and you see a red glowing apple hanging from a vine. It looks as if the stem is going to break. As it begins to spin, you have a choice. Will you take the apple from the vine?
I will take the apple from the vine.
And so, you acquire 1 apple of replenishment. You spring back into the heart of the jungle, overflowing still with an unnatural sense of urgency and vigor for something you aren't sure what. A large rustling in the jungle grabs your attention as you plant your feet, breaking with a stylish slide. You hesitate with a pause in front of this rustling bush, realizing you will now face whatever beast hides behind the leafy camouflage. But before you can react, a small crow emerges. With tattered feathers, a body lacking hardly any meat on its bones, and eyes filled with unmistakable determination. The crow looks around for something. The poor old weathered bird takes a meek step forward, waning as its eyes fixate upon the glowing apple in your hand. What item will you offer the crow?
Well, once again, I'm stuck with a very difficult decision and only one way out, so I will gladly pass my apple to that crow.
The crow ravenously pecks at the magical apple of replenishment, and with every peck, the old warrior seems to gain strength. You have unlocked a companion, Odin the Warrior Crow, and you ascend to power level 2. Now, for ascending to power level 2, you have now unlocked the second part of your PSA slabs, a Vega the Watcher PSA 10 art series card. Now, I think you were there when we got these, but this is now a duplicate. You now have 2 PSA slabs as part of your prizes earned for level 1 here. As we progress, Odin flies into the open air, cawing at you as if to say, "Follow me." You exit through the brush into a clearing, and as you look for the majestic Odin, your gaze finds him in front of a remarkable sight, a smoldering, smoking, active volcano. You instinctively continue to follow the path into an open mine shaft, your feet moving before your mind does, Odin flying closely behind you. You have now entered level 2, the mine shaft. Little do you know or recollect, but the beautiful angel of time is smiling upon you. For acquiring all of the available power, you have also gained an unopened pack. I believe it's 2019, a Japanese Magic the Gathering War of the Spark. So that will be added for completing level 1. And thus concludes level 1, the volcano, and today's segment of Sejum's Murder.
Wow.
It's a good work, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I did so much there to turn the tables around and actually feel confident about this mission now.
Yeah, well, so I and this as I forgot to add, for reaching level 2, you are now doubled your points from 125 to 250. So your points have doubled anyway.
So let me get this right. I was under the impression that choosing to redo the level and with the potential of getting double the points and all this, like I would be forfeiting all the prizes and the points leading up to that. So what you're saying is getting through it has now...
This was about to be this was about to be a really, like, if you chose to proceed, you were basically forfeiting. You wouldn't have gotten any of the additional prizes, and you would have forfeited your PSA 9 Vega. But I looked at this like a multi-level game, and so I figured, dude, it was about to just be brutal, because you would have just forfeited for no reason, but I figured you would learn for the future, but this was kind of a necessary path anyway, so it's good. It's concluded as it should, and I feel like, hopefully this is treated like a real level, and you take some lessons from our first little playthrough. And yeah, I think this will build, and I'm having a blast just messing with this stuff. For our next upload, I will add the artwork that has been now done for the Angel of Time.
Ooh.
As described.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for that. Cool, man. I'm glad that I could actually utilize, the items that were put upon me, like this apple, and then keep the crow alive long enough for it to actually survive and now seemingly be my counterpart in the next levels. So I am quite excited to see what's to come from this.
Yeah, dude, it's fun. I wish, man, I knew an animator and they could just like make a movie out of this at the end. It might maybe something I'll have to meet someone that is interested in doing.
It'd be very cool. I mean, every time I close my eyes, and I don't know if the audience members would be able to close their eyes if they're driving home from work or something crazy like that. Don't do that. But it really is like a visual experience.
Like
and-
we go viral and like thousands of people are dead. They're like on the news. They're like, podcast Black Lotus Buds kills millions of people as they pilots close their eyes, drivers close. It's just like chaos across the globe.
Yeah, everybody's like, "Oh, we're taking it literally. We were hoping that this raven would come by and save us."
Odin! They're shouting
Yeah.
Odin, walking out
Odin.
of their totaled cars.
Yeah. Well, before we truly end our podcast today, Michael, I do want you to take a look at that lovely little letter sitting next to you. That has been sitting there collecting just a little bit of dust over the last couple weeks. And I want to propose to you a similar scenario. You are stuck in a room with only 4 questions to answer. If you guess at least 2 of these questions correct, you will win a totally additional prize from that before you. Now, be careful to what I say here, because with more than 20,000 unique cards in Magic the Gathering for me to buy you, this one might be priceless. So, my first question is, what card type might this card be?
Is this just open-ended?
Open-ended.
Is when you say card type, you mean the distinction between creature, instant, enchantment, aura?
Exactly. Yep. And those that you know. I haven't thrown like a battle in here to fool you or anything. So, what's a card type? What's a card type you want to commit to here?
Man, I'm trying to pick up on clues, but I don't know. I'm gonna say a land.
Okay. Now, the very next question might change, might go against that, but what is the mana cost of this card?
Damn it. Okay. I'm gonna say no mana cost.
Okay. What is the color of this card?
Damn it.
I will give you the 5 options.
Dude. Okay.
One of the 5 land cards, okay? Mountain is red, Plains is white, Forest is green, Swamp
I'm going
is black.
with plains.
Okay. And then Island was blue. All right, and then pick one mechanic that you think might be on this card. Any mechanic at all. Any ability at all. Anything.
Hexproof.
Okay. I can reveal to you, Michael, that you got none of this correct. However, I don't think that should be a worry of yours, because now I would like for you to open up the package and reveal its contents, and you tell me what you see before you.
All right, so you want me to open this thing now?
Go for it, man.
This is a card, right? So I can tear the non-card section of this.
Yeah, it's protected. I mean, it's not necessarily it's not, again, I consider it to be priceless, but you have to put your price on it. Okay.
All right.
All right.
I'm opening it. This says, could it be a holy grail? You decide. Okay. And inside, it has a rocky, mischievous trickster. And it is my actual cat on my DDR pad, which is really cute. He is a 2 black and 1 mana card, so 3 altogether. A legendary creature, cat warrior, with death touch and reach. It says, he's a 2/2. It says, whenever this creature attacks with one or more other creatures, mobilize 1. And it also does Smackdown for 1 swamp and 3 mana. Lose 1 life, draw a card, and create a 0/1 cat creature token named Furball. Activate only as a sorcery. Yeah, dude, I love this thing. At first I was like, oh, this is a cat that looks like Rocky. And then as I looked at this, I realized this is Rocky.
Yeah. So, not one that I could have purchased, but hoping that it could be considered priceless.
Yeah, dude.
There's
I
also
love this thing.
There's also little hidden features on it. At the bottom, what set did it come from? BLB.
Black Lotus buds.
Yeah. How many cards of the set? Only 1, so it's a 1 of 1. And the emblem there is the mythic from the alpha set. So I dated the card to be 1993 when they first started coming out. So I thought it might be, one of these ancient finds and a holy grail. But you will be the one who determines that.
Yeah, dude, I'm sleeving this thing right now.
Cool. Yeah, a little bit
thank you.
roughly put together, but I thought you might find it cool.
Yeah, dude, I actually do a lot. I didn't know what was in here. I love this thing. I don't think you could. You hit this out of the park, dude. I got a soft spot for this little furball too.
Cool, man. Yeah, everything that you've told me across the way. With the little bit you shared with me with Rocky, I figured, hopefully I'd come up with a cool little personalized. Everything about here was.
How did you get this picture? Did I send this to you?
No. So I scoured the internet, searching for all signs of life with Rocky, and this was what I found. And I was able to, utilize getting it into a black and white, draw like stencil scale, so it looks like it's hand drawn. And then just kept thinking about what would Rocky's abilities be here. So for the listeners, we'll post this on Instagram or something so people can take a look at it. But yeah, man, I thought it'd be kind of neat, tribute to Rocky himself.
Yeah, it's adorable.
Cool.
When you asked your questions and you said with 20,000 cards, something about priceless. I thought we were doing a priceless, like a no-cost card. So I guess land. And then when that was wrong, dude, it was just over. I was lost. I was like, oh no.
I'll still give you opportunities to win a prize because I do have one that is specific to you and for you.
I like that game too. You ever see? There's some guy that does. Guess the card, win the card. He must own a card shop. He goes over to people, and that's like they have like a minute or 30 seconds to like. They'll ask. They'll be like white or black, and he'll answer. But they have to name it. Like I would be Dooms. If someone like you might have more experience. You know more of the names of the cards.
Yeah.
But it's
that'd be wild.
It reminds me of that kind of like. It's an enjoyable game.
Indeed. Well, hey. More to come, and maybe next podcast. I don't really think we have a topic to discuss, so we might ask our friends or audience between now and then what the topic should be that they would like to hear to start our next podcast. So maybe we can leave it at that. And was there anything else, Michael, you want to share tonight?
No, that's a satisfying conclusion.
Cool. Well, until next time. We appreciate you all for listening, and like always, we will catch you all next time.